The Parade of the Defeated. How Moscow stunned the world in 1944. Picture this. It's July 17th, 1944, in Moscow, the heart of the Soviet Union. The streets are buzzing with anticipation, but this isn't a celebration of Soviet glory. Instead, 57,000 German prisoners of war, dirty, ragged, some barefoot, are marching through the city in a grim procession. This was no triumphant parade like the Nazis had fantasized about when they launched their invasion in 1941. This was the Soviet Union's bold move to show the world. The Third Reich's dreams of conquering Moscow were dead. You might have heard the old story that every German soldier carried a neatly folded dress uniform in their backpack, ready for a victory parade on Red Square. Was it true? Probably more of a wartime legend than fact, but there's a kernel of truth. German officers, cocky after steamrolling through Europe, genuinely believed they'd be goose-stepping through Moscow by the end of 1941. Instead, they got a parade of defeat, watched by Soviet citizens and Allied observers alike. Let's unpack this incredible story, from the audacious German plans to the Soviet comeback, with a deep dive into the economic and human factors that made it all possible. The Nazi Dream, Operation Barbarossa. To understand this parade, we need to rewind to 1940, when Nazi Germany was riding high. Hitler's war machine had crushed Poland, France, and much of Western Europe. The Third Reich's economy was a juggernaut, fueled by plundered resources from occupied territories. The plan? Operation Barbarossa, a lightning-fast invasion of the Soviet Union, launched on June 22, 1941. The goal was to crush the Red Army, seize European Russia up to the Ural Mountains, and wrap it all up in just 9 to 14 weeks. Moscow, the Soviet capital, was the ultimate prize, a symbol of victory that would cement Germany's dominance. German generals were so confident that some reportedly packed dress uniforms for a grand parade on Red Square. Memoirs from the time mentioned supply trains carrying ceremonial gear, though whether every soldier had one in their backpack is dubious. Sounds like Soviet propaganda doing its job. By fall 1941, German troops were closing in on Moscow, just miles away. Victory seemed inevitable, but the Soviets had other plans. The Battle of Moscow, starting September 30th, 1941, was a brutal wake-up call for the Nazis. Soviet troops fought with everything they had, holding the line in freezing conditions. By December 5th, a Soviet counteroffensive pushed the Germans back, shattering their dreams of a quick win. The parade they'd imagined? It wasn't happening. Not on their terms, anyway. Economic backdrop. Germany versus the Soviet Union. Let's talk numbers to set the stage. In 1940, Germany's economy was a powerhouse. According to historical data, it produced about 10 million tons of steel annually, dwarfing most of Europe. Occupied territories like France and Czechoslovakia fed Germany's war machine with raw materials and factories. The Nazis had access to vast coal reserves, oil from Romania, and a disciplined workforce. They believed this gave them the edge to crush the Soviets. The Soviet Union, on the other hand, was still catching up. The 1930s industrialization push had built factories and boosted production, but the USSR was recovering from the chaos of the Russian Civil War and Stalin's purges. Still, the Soviets had a secret weapon: resilience. By 1941, they'd begun evacuating entire factories to the Ural Mountains and Siberia, out of German reach. By 1944, Soviet industry was outpacing Germany's. For example, the USSR churned out 29,000 tanks in 1944 compared to Germany's 17,000, according to wartime records. This industrial might set the stage for the Moscow parade. Operation Bagration, the tide turns. Fast forward to June 1944. The Soviets launched Operation Bagration, named after a Russian hero from the Napoleonic Wars. This massive offensive, starting exactly 3 years after Barbarossa, targeted the German Army Group Center in Belarus. The result? A catastrophic defeat for the Nazis. In weeks, the Red Army liberated Belarus, killed or captured around 400,000 German troops, and obliterated Army Group Center. Of those, 160,000 became prisoners of war, the very men who would march through Moscow. This wasn't just a military win, it was a psychological blow. The defeat shook Hitler's confidence, leading to an assassination attempt against him on July 20th, 1944. For the Soviets, Bagration was proof they could not only defend but dominate, and they decided to make a statement with their prisoners. The parade of July 17th, 1944, a spectacle of defeat. On a sunny morning in July 1944, at 11 a.m., 57,000 German prisoners, including 1,227 officers, began their march down Leningrad Highway into Moscow. Forget polished boots and crisp uniforms. These men were a mess. Many wore tattered clothes, some were in their underwear, others barefoot. Their faces showed exhaustion and despair. This was the Soviet Union's way of saying, "Your dreams of glory? Done." The procession moved down Tverskaya Street, Moscow's main drag, toward Mayakovsky Square. There, the column split. About 42,000 men continued through Sadovaya Karatnaya, Sadovaya Samodyaknaya, and Sadovaya Chernobrayskaya streets, ending at Kursky Station. The other 15,600 headed down Bolshaya Sadovaya, Sadovo-Kadrinskaya, Novinsky Boulevard, Smolensky Boulevard, Zubovskaya Square, and Krimskaya and Kalazkaya streets to Konachikovo Station. At both stations, the prisoners were loaded onto trains bound for labor camps. The cleaning crews, a symbolic and practical touch. Here's where it gets wild. Behind the columns rolled street cleaning trucks, officially there to wash away the filth of Nazism from Moscow streets. Sounds poetic, right? But the truth is more human. The prisoners, many of whom hadn't eaten properly in weeks, were given a hearty meal before the march, porridge and bread with lard. For their malnourished bodies, this was too much, too fast, leading to, digestive issues. The trucks were there to clean up the mess. It's a gritty detail that reminds us war is messy in every sense. The crowd and the guards. The march was heavily guarded. Soviet cavalry with drawn sabers and NKVD troops with rifles lined the route. But the prisoners weren't running anywhere. They were too broken. Moscow's citizens gathered to watch, some shouting anti-Nazi slogans, others just staring at the defeated enemy. A few tried to lash out at the prisoners, but NKVD agents in the crowd quickly stepped in. One moment stood out. French collaborators, marching among the prisoners, spotted General Petit, head of the French military mission in Moscow. They shouted, "Vive la France! Forgive us, they forced us." Petit, unimpressed, snapped back, "Scoundrels! Those who didn't want to fight are still fighting." His words cut deep, a reminder of the shame of collaboration. Why this parade mattered. This wasn't just a march. It was a masterclass in propaganda and psychology. For the Soviets, it was a chance to flex their strength. To the Allies watching, it said, "We've got this under control." Marching 57,000 prisoners through your capital? That's a bold move, showing the world the USSR wasn't just surviving, it was winning. For Soviet citizens, the parade was a morale booster. 3 years of war had left scars, destroyed cities, lost loved ones, food shortages. Seeing the enemy in such a pathetic state gave people a sense of justice and hope. It was a middle finger to Nazi ideology, which called Germans the master race. Spoiler, they didn't look so masterful that day. The economic angle. How the Soviets pulled it off. Let's zoom out to the economics. By 1944, the Soviet Union was a wartime juggernaut. Despite losing 30% of its national wealth early in the war, the USSR had relocated over 1,500 factories eastward, keeping production humming. In 1944, They built 33,000 aircraft to Germany's 22,000. The US and UK helped via Lend-Lease, sending 400,000 trucks, food, and raw materials that kept Soviet logistics tight. Organizing a parade of 57,000 prisoners in the middle of a war, that took serious resources and confidence. Germany, meanwhile, was crumbling. Allied bombings crippled its factories, and occupied territories were slipping out of control. By 1944, Germany's oil production was down to 5.7 million tons from a peak of 7.7 million in 1940. The contrast was stark. The Soviets were outproducing and outfighting the Nazis. This parade isn't just a footnote in history. It's a lesson in resilience. The Soviets took a moment of triumph and turned it into a global statement. For Americans, it's a reminder of what unity and determination can achieve. The U.S. played a huge role in World War II, from D-Day to the Pacific, but the Soviet effort, especially moments like this, shows how every ally brought something unique to the table. On a human level, the parade is a stark image of war's cost. Those German soldiers weren't just enemies. They were men caught in a brutal machine, many drafted or coerced. Their march through Moscow was a low point, but it's a reminder that war leaves no one untouched. Today, as we face new global challenges, this story urges us to value peace, honor sacrifice, and stay vigilant against ideologies that divide us. The Moscow Parade of 1944 is more than a historical curiosity. It's a testament to the power of perseverance. The Soviet Union, written off by many in 1941, turned the tables and showed the world what it was made of. This story deserves to be told, not just for its drama, but for its lessons about strength, unity, and the human spirit. So, hit that subscribe button and let us know in the comments. What do you think of this parade? How does it change your view of World War II? Your thoughts keep this history alive. Share this story with friends, and let's keep exploring the past together. The lessons of 1944 still echo today. Don't miss out on more stories like this.